Welcome back to the Ultimate Educators Disrupting Education somewhere in the system. I don't know. We're still playing around with the title of this entire series at the time of this, but how are you doing, Allie?
Doing good. We're looking for flow here, Peter. We want it to it can visually work, but we
Yes.
want the series to hit off the mouth since we're podcasters. That's
Maybe
why
I
we got to.
just figured it out there, right?
This is an awesome series that we are, maybe winter time, but this series is heating up. What I love about where we're headed this year in 2025 for the podcast is that it's all about people in the system doing the daily grind of like disrupting education. And we thought of this series for our listeners because we want you to hear from the people.
Yeah.
Like, and that you guys are not alone, and no matter where you start it can grow and all of this. And so, but we just got to work on the title. We'll have it
Got
by
you.
the time this
We'll
comes
have it.
out.
Yeah. I'm sure I'll edit something in before this and you'll hear it. Um, So guess who introduced our guest here? It would have been Mr. Don Wettrick. So somewhere on LinkedIn, we met our guest. I'm going to introduce him here. Now, here's what I love about this. I grew up in a rural area. I do know rural educators have a lot different job than suburban, urban educators. Uh, Better, worse, whatever you say. Like I really think rural educators hustle and makes amazing things. So this is this person's signature on their email, right? Senior Internship Coordinator, AP History, US History, Econ, Psychology, Student Media, Business, Junior Class Moderator, Girls Golf Coach, which I can definitely relate to. He is and was a golf pro, also a real estate agent. Jason Walke is here with us. Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Is there anything I missed there?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I used to have basketball coach on there too, but I did finally relinquish that title going into this year.
I don't know how you work 25 hours a day, my friend. So you are at the Oldenburg Academy of the Immaculate Conception. Tell us a little bit about your own educational background before we get into all the amazing things that you're doing there.
Sure. So that's where small town Oldenburg is where I'm at now. That is right next door to another small town called Batesville. That's where I was born and raised, went to high school there. It was a fairly small school as well. I had about 115, 20 kids in my graduating class. And then from there went on to IU in Bloomington, got a degree in secondary education. And while I was working on that degree, I worked at the IU golf course in my spare time. And I've always been a golf person. When I graduated from college after the experience working there, local course in my hometown offered me a job as an assistant golf pro. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to push education back for a little bit and kind of chase this dream. And so I worked in the golf industry for close to 17 years as assistant pro, head pro, general manager, all of that of some different golf courses around the state until finally kids were starting to get older. My oldest was getting into middle school and I was ready to settle down a little bit in the golf industry. We were moving every 4 to 5 years, just kind of working up the ladder. And I wanted to be settled in. So found a teaching job back home at a different small rural school, public school that I taught at for 4 years. And then the job here at Oldenburg Academy opened up and it gets me a little bit closer to home. And it's a small private school. And I've been here this is my third year.
Awesome.
I love the loop, of coming back to your roots and education being there. Like I started in education after, college and did it for 10 years. And I'm open to the possibility that I could go back into it at some point in years. It's like, oh, I followed this other dream, but I went back to use my degree and probably serve in a community that's near and dear to your heart. Is there anything like, when you think about like teaching now and the all the roles that you have in the school, is there been like in working with the local community where you think, oh, this is home. Like this is why I do this. Like yes, and like that gives you a different sense of purpose than like you had when you were pursuing the golf career.
Oh, definitely. I mean, just coming off the top of my head, kind of thinking of a couple things. I mean, that's the golf job for me. I mean, as a kid was even kind of a dream job, and I thought I loved it, and I did really enjoy it and loved when I was in it. But then once I got into teaching, especially teaching closer to home and working with families of fellow colleagues and teaching kids of like who used to be my fellow high school students with me, and have their kids in high school now is pretty interesting to see. But just the feeling of, I guess, as they say, like my cup feels much fuller as a
Mm.
educator than it did when I was in the golf industry. That's seeing the success of the kids and having them reach out after their high school days are over and telling me things that they enjoyed and were impressed by being in my classroom. That hits home a lot more than anything ever did when I was in the golf industry. And just to be able to have that in the local community as well and start building up those relationships that I had gotten away from. I mean, I'd been moved away from our community for about 20 years until after college and coming back home. So coming back home and reestablishing old friend networks and, like I said, getting to know their children and even teaching some of them, it's been amazing.
I love that because we somehow probably crossed paths and we didn't know it. You spoke of like going all the way out to Jackson Hole and working out there, and I can almost guarantee you we probably crossed paths somewhere along the way. I played that course; it's beautiful. I don't know why you would ever want to leave that course, but I get it. So that to me, why I'm saying that is that means like you're really driven to really help others. So one of the things that really interested me in having this conversation was, there were a couple, and a lot of our conversations start on LinkedIn. Reading through comments of people that we both know, and Don Wettrick, as we know, is just an amazing dude. And there was somewhere on there, I think that you put a comment, and I was like, wait a minute. I started looking things up, and we had a conversation. And you let me know that every one of those students in the school that you're at will graduate with an internship experience. Can you unpack that for us? Because I think you're ahead of the curve here.
Sure. I mean, to be honest, when I moved from previous school to this one, the internship program was the biggest sell for me. That's at my previous school. I'd actually talked about trying to do an internship program there. They didn't have one, and I had put a whole plan together. And for them, it just didn't work out. They have kids that do co-op and kids doing Ivy Tech, and for as small as they were, they said we couldn't really see how that can fit in, which I completely understand. So knowing that there was an internship program here and I was going to be in charge of it was the big selling point for me. But that's as we've gotten going that with it, we have it set up that every senior goes through a semester long internship. With the way our schedule is right now and within Indiana, economics and government are one semester classes. So we set it up that we have half of our kids doing half of the senior class doing an internship one semester. And then the other semester, they would be taking that economics and then government class. So they're essentially off campus the first two periods of the day while those two classes are going on. And they get to be exposed. It's about, with travel time, they're getting about 2 hours of experience at their internship site. So it's fantastic in that regard that we do get every senior going through it. So all of them do leave. And with it being a semester long, they're going to their sites essentially 5 days a week. So they're getting an entire semester, 5 days a week at their site. And it's been great too. One of the things I've really focused on is kids that aren't sure what they want to do career wise, we can break it up too. I've got probably half of my kids that do them do two internships, maybe even three. That couple days a week they're going to one place, the other couple days are going somewhere else, and it's neat to see that get set up and them go through that experience. And right now, as for us getting into this school year getting going and then finishing up, the internship program is going to look a little bit different next year. But I do really like just the basis of everybody goes through it. That's we do end our program with a presentation. It's a like business professional presentation. They get dressed up in their suit and ties, fancy business dresses, come in and they put together a 10-minute presentation that talks about their experience. That's we do have the site supervisors. They're invited to come view them. And I want to say more times than not, they're able to fit that into their schedule that they come in and watch those. And it's fantastic for everybody. The internship supervisors leave going, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I appreciate those suggestions and thoughts that we can make some changes. And it's the students do a great job with that.
I have so many questions because I'm sure some listeners are going to be like, every student, how do you make that possible? How does it grow? And this one, I will say, like, rural communities have a huge advantage, I feel like, in this arena. But that being said, like, how did the program start? You know, like, was it literally just like 1 year, we're just doing it and we're just going to stumble along the way, or did it kind of grow? And then what has the response from the community been? Because I know people listening to this is like, that's super disruptive. And then, like, what happens? Like, you know, how long? And, you know, kind of talk through some of just the impact that you see and hear as the coordinator of this program.
So that's the program started, I want to say it was 7 or 8 years ago. It was before my time, but I know I've got a good relationship with the person that was in this position when they put it together. And it has pretty much, it was about a year in the making from what I understand, but it's been set up. The basics of it have been the same ever since then. It's been every senior has gone through it. And you are right. Being in a rural school, we are a very small private school. I mean, that's our senior class has anywhere from 35 to 50 kids in it each year. So we definitely are very small. So that is very much an advantage to us. We are right next door to Batesville as well. So most of our kids actually do internships within the Batesville area. The town of Oldenburg itself is a population of under 1,000. There's a few businesses around here, but not many. So most of our kids are in the Batesville area or they work close to home. We get kids that are traveling from different communities that are 40, 45 minutes away potentially. So it works well in that regard. But as far as the community goes, they love it. I mean, myself as the coordinator, I really focus on meeting with the kids during their junior year, figure out their interests, and then I take it upon myself to start establishing partnerships with the different businesses that try to fit with those career interests. And I explain our program to them. And I am yet to really get any negative feedback. We don't get any kids turned away unless that particular place already has some interns set up through a different school system or something like that. Other than that, they've been very receptive, and I love it too, because I know it's a big ask of them, because we want it to be a good experience, that kids aren't just showing up and standing there watching somebody work and then leaving. We want them to be involved. We let them know we want them to be involved, and they typically take it and run with it. And the feedback from the community at the end of every semester when I reach out to them is always, we loved it. We hope we can get more in the future. This has been great. There's been job offers to some of our seniors that have come from these as well. So it's been fantastic.
Something that you mentioned before we started recording is that it's changing, it's evolving, and you mentioned juniors in the mix. Can you kind of unpack that? What's being talked about there with possible juniors going on into internships or some sort of preparation?
Yeah, so I am thoroughly excited for next school year with all the different kind of roles I play here. A lot of it fits in with what's going on. And we are completely, that's you want to go with disrupt education. We are disrupting the system with the way our school days are going to look. That's starting next school years. We have 4 traditional days, Tuesday through Friday, 7 period days, 50-minute classes, pretty normal. Mondays are going to be turned into what we call Mission Mondays. And when you think about throughout the school year, all the different disruptions that happen with field trips, with different types of classes needing to pull kids for XYZ. Being a private school, we have retreats that take place and a whole bunch of different things that are right now our schedule gets interrupted, seems like on a weekly basis with something going on. All of those are being moved to Mondays, as well as our internship program. And the feedback from the community with the initial thought of our internship program doing this has been fantastic, because right now they go 5 days a week, hour and a half to 2 hours a day. The biggest pushback I have gotten from both students as well as the internship sites is we wish they had more time. That's
Mhm.
they wish they could be here longer than what they're here. So moving the internships to Mondays next year, they're going to be able to be at their internship site for anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. They can go the entire school day, but we want to have them there at least 4. That way they can dive in a lot more. They're not going to be going on the Tuesday through Friday. So that's essentially, they're still going to be the same number of hours for the week, but it's all at one time so they can get a lot more immersive with what they're doing. And with that being said, since we have these Mondays set up this way, we're working it out where right now, instead of splitting it half a semester or one semester for half the senior class and then the other semester for the other half, we're going to do one semester will be all seniors, since we can put them all on that Monday. And then the other semester, we are getting our juniors involved with what we call a fellowship program. It's going to be on Mondays as well. Expectations probably won't be as deep as the internship program is right now. It'll be more, we call it a fellowship program, and it's probably going to be more of a job shadowing, but trying to get in that 2 to 4 hour range, something like that, so that they can dive into it as well. But we're going to make that where every junior does that as well. So they'll do that their junior year. That experience they'll be able to use to help set them up for an internship that they want to do their senior year then.
I mean, that is disruptive and awesome. I mean, like, I just, uh, we don't hear a lot or as much as we'd like to hear of school districts just saying, look, what if we threw out the traditional model? I mean, even for one day a week, I mean, there's 18 weeks in a semester. And even if you got 15, so 30 over a year, that's 30 days in a year that is potentially could change the total trajectory for a student, and like what impact not only your school district can have, but the community partnerships. So I'm really interested in, kind of like your role, right? Like you wear all these hats, and our listeners are probably like, how, yes, okay, 35 to 50 kids each year is still a substantial number, right? That's a lot of
Mhm.
placements, and then that's on top of your other duties. So like, you know, what does, like, your role in terms of, like, just beyond just like getting students into their internship, can it making the partnerships, like what do you see as like the impact of your role, or like kind of the other parts of leading something like this? Like you talked about before we got on, you're like, I had to go present this to the board. And like people might not understand that, like you have to be a spokesperson, or I don't know, cheerleader, whatever other kind of hats you wear in that space, so somebody could kind of wrap their mind around, like, oh, okay, this is what I'm actually going to be doing if I'm leading programming like this.
So that's, I would say, great thing is just the support from our administrators to help with this. I get a extra prep period, and typically they try to work that prep period out where they're both my preps are back to back. That gives me one big block of time, or it's like tied into lunch where I have some extra time. And I do spend a lot of time that I'll go off campus. I'm going to set up those partnerships. I'm going to different businesses within the communities, talking to them about our program, trying to get them to sign on to be a partner with me. It also involves, like I said, student meetings. So that's, I'm spending a lot of time just meeting with the students to figure out, okay, some kids are like, yeah, I want my career to be this. Those kids are pretty easy. But then you have the other kids that are like, I don't know what I want to do. I have really no clue. And it's like, okay, what do you find fun? What's interesting? And then we have to dig and brainstorm and really work on trying to come up with ideas of where they would like to go. And once I get that list together, then it's a matter of hitting the ground running and making phone calls, sending emails, going out into the community just to get everything set up. Once we do have them set up, that's usually the first week of the semester. The students do not report to their internship site until the second week. So that first week, we spend time, we go over our expectations, what we expect out of our students. We talk about resumes, we talk about interviews, and like we dive in on some of these other things to get them ready for just career oriented thought when they're starting their internship the following week. And then throughout the year, that's as they're at their internship, I try to make it a priority to get out and go visit the internship sites while the students are there from time to time and just check in, see how things are going. It is a routine email, just checking in, making sure that the internship site coordinators have no issues, that attendance is good, that everything is going well, and just kind of keeping a constant open communication with them to see if we need to make any adjustments. Because we do get some that it might be their first time bringing an intern in. And as things are going, they're like, you know what? We really can't do 5 days a week. We can tell the kids getting bored. There's not enough that we can keep providing them during the time that we're here. We need to cut this down. And I'm definitely sure we'll do what we need to do. So then I kind of jump in there and work with the student about, okay, what are some other options that we can look at to fill in the rest of the semester and add to it. And so it's always something.
Yeah. We call it highly individualized where I'm at. So yeah, you really do have to work with each entity and then with each student. So kudos to you, like throwing out like 35 to 50 students, and that's I can hear the excitement underneath like how you're explaining things, and I really like that. My question is, the culture of a school. Okay, so yes, you are a private school, faith-based, so that's usually top, right? And then you go into service and typical. I'm just kind of giving the basics here. I'm sure it's a lot deeper if you go to the school site. I want to know like how are other I mean, you teach half the subjects, but like, how are other the subjects? Like, is there integration here? Is there talk of integration of like, not just necessarily like knowledge and skills that go around the knowledge, but like work-based skills, durable skills? Are those interwoven into some of the curriculum, or is that something that it's just basically on the internship side of things?
No, it does get interwoven. Like I know our English teacher, she actually works with the kids that they create a professional resume when they're in her class. And we are a college prep high school. It's part of our mission statement that is our goal is to get these kids ready for college and off to college. And we've got teachers that in their classes they're spending time focusing on how to do proper college applications and creating essays for scholarships and helping them out in that regard as well. And even with our internship, like we'll get some kids that are interested in the sciences. We don't have a whole lot of businesses locally that are science related, but we have a chemistry teacher that is phenomenal that has a chemical engineering degree and has worked in that field before teaching. So she'll bring an intern into her classroom and be able to work with them through that as well. And so that's no, it gets tied in through quite a few of the different subject areas.
Yeah,
So
Allie's a
really,
pretty good, was, still is a
uh,
pretty good chemistry teacher.
well, yeah, I guess. Okay, so maybe this is a disruptive question in itself, but how does there isn't a culture clash if you're a college prep, but yet you're doing all these interns work-based experiences? I'm thinking to myself, if I was a parent, like what is my kid going to want to go in the workforce? Like, do you have any of those kind of conversations? I mean, obviously we see it as a benefit. It encourages new pathways and opens students' minds to be literally out in the community, out in the field, exploring like what working actually feels like. But I would think that maybe there were conversations along the way that it's like, is this really college prep? I would argue it is, but I'm wondering like how does the culture of the school, embrace that? Because other schools that are labeled as college prep probably don't go down this road because the community doesn't have that kind of support, or the staff is like, how is that building them and getting them ready for college? College isn't a job. What would you say?
So that's our focus is really we try to find what their interest is for a college degree, and then we try to get the internship lined up with something like that. So, like for example, as we were ending the fall semester of this school year and kids doing their presentations, that's I had one student that their idea that they want to go to college for is mechanical engineering. We were able to set him up at one of our local factories that he was able to work with a couple of their engineers, and it was a die making facility, and he got to tear apart dies and see how they're made, and he got to figure out a lot of those things. And while he was there, when he went through his presentation, he goes, not only did this really open my eyes to mechanical engineering, he goes, I also got to see some stuff with electrical engineering. And so he goes, I maybe even think about going into that field now in college as well. So our students still are college focused. That's when they give their presentations. We always, one of the requirements is to end talking about what their future plans are. And that's usually, it always comes back to this experience has helped me solidify that this is a career I want to go into, and this is what I'm going to go to college for to get into that career. Or it's the opposite. It is, I thought this was a career I wanted to get into after doing this for a semester. It is not. And I'm glad that I did this because I'm not going to waste college time on going after that. I now can shift and look at other ideas for going to college for. So it's still pretty college based. Everything they go into, we still have college at the forefront, the ideas of what they want to do with a college degree and try to get the internship set up that way.
This is why I think you're so far ahead of the curve, honestly. I can tell you that there are large schools around where I'm at that are very well funded that do not see it that way. They still, I just need to get the grades and and I love what you're doing because it's a yes and teaching a student or having them experience it, not really teaching, because there's a lot of things in an internship that you just can't teach. They have to experience it. And, to see whether they like it or they don't like it, you win either way. And yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about that as internship coordinators where we are. We just had a student, say in the accounting world, he was like, it's kind of repetitive. And I'm like, yeah, and that's okay. Like that's okay if if you get quote unquote bored. He didn't want to like tell us he was disappointed in the internship, but yeah, because that's okay. Like you need to experience. Imagine if you went through 4 years of college and then all of a sudden you're there, or you went through your first internship your junior or senior year of college. So I love that. So you said this is your third year there, right?
Correct.
So that means you probably have some sophomores in college out there and that probably you connect with. Do you have any like just one or two stories there where, you've reconnected with a kid who's done an internship and something that, you're like, yeah, that's great. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking that I had one student that during his junior and senior year here, he was focused on most likely getting into the science realm. He went through and we were able to get a internship set up with him for science as well. And he enjoyed his internship, but he did his internship first semester. Second semester, as he's just taking other classes and going through, he actually was not in my business class, but was always talking to me about business and things like that. And so it's funny because he decided when he went off to college, he's like, as I thought about it more, science wasn't for me. He goes, that's so he's off and he's doing a business degree now. And that's I can tell just through conversations I've had back and forth with him over his That's he's a freshman this year, but
Mhm.
over his freshman year, he's reached out a few times asking some questions for some different things, and I can tell he seems like he's at home with this degree. So it is neat to see that because that's he did cherish his experience with his internship, but that's like you said, is he kind of was able to ponder, process kind of what he went through and realize, is this really what I want for life? He's like that, not really, and made that career change and seems pretty happy where he is now.
That's great. That's great.
Love that. I love that. I
Yeah.
have to ask, so, right, you might, I don't know, before this conversation, if you're like, oh yeah, I would put myself under educational disruptor title. We think you are, which is why we reached out. But like from your perspective, right, the work that you do, it seems like you don't seem stressed or like overwhelmed by it. You know, you're doing the work, and there's like a lot of flow in what you're sharing, which is awesome, which is like why we love having these conversations to show people like it can happen, it can grow, etc. So for you, I don't know if you've thought about this, but like you're thinking about this whole new change for next year with your school and the internship program, but like what would you say to people is like maybe how can you like what would you say to how can you be disruptive or like what is an opportunity to be disruptive in education? Maybe you're not doing it, maybe it's something you want to do, or it is something that you're doing, but just like what would you say is a way to disrupt education for 2025? I know I'm just throwing that out there.
No, I appreciate that. Just kind of thinking off the spot, I would say for me, it's has been the thought of connecting with communities. I mean, kind of going back and yes, we're a college prep school. Yes, grades are definitely important to our faculty, to students, to the families, and everything in that regard. But at the same time, I try to focus on how can we connect with our communities? How can we get guest speakers to come into the classroom? How can we work with local businesses and create some partnerships there, whether it's through the internship program or through my entrepreneurship class, trying to work with local entrepreneurs on different things. And by doing that, it has really, I would say it has disrupted the kids' educations. They're picking up on these soft skills that are just as important as grades are. They're figuring out problem solving. They're starting to think that instead of being a complainer over everything, there's things that can be fixed with this. And then that's even when thinking of my business kids, there's ways to monetize how we fix these things. And how amazing is that I can make money off somebody complaining about something. And it's just been great to kind of see that. And all of that really started with connecting to the community. And for me personally, being in Indiana, I know you mentioned Don Wettrick earlier, that's being the CEO of the Started Up Foundation. This is also year 3. When I started here, I joined the fellowship program that the Started Up Foundation has. And when I started, we had 20 some teachers involved. This year, we've got 100 teachers. It's been growing, and that's for those that are in Indiana. I would recommend that because that's really where this whole philosophy of thought with myself came from. My teaching has changed quite a bit from my previous school to here, and a lot of it came from that fellowship program.
I can't tell you how like awesome to hear that creating a community. For those who don't know, I know we've had this conversation. I did grow up in Indiana, so Hoosiers, let's go, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, that community is so important, and Don is a huge leader, and I'm not sure if that there is talk about that going beyond Indiana. Obviously, I
There
think
is.
there
We
is.
actually have a few fellows this year that are outside
Yeah,
of Indiana.
right. And I do know a few people in Pennsylvania and Ohio that are kind of, teetering in there with Don as well. So, that just humbles my heart, really understanding, there's a couple of words that you said over and over again is like, you're excited, the excitement of of change. And I think that's something that makes a very disruptive, unique, ultimate educator in the experience, right? So we started this entire conversation off with, your experiences. And there is change. And obviously, I used to work on a golf course down in Florida. I bartended at a country club. So there, pros move around, and there's a lot of movement and a lot of change. And you have to deal with all different kinds of people and situations, and we're not even talking about the weather yet, right? So you have all these different things, and then to take that and to pull those skills that you've had and then share with others is truly amazing. I think it's I mean, honestly, you are doing something that is not only leading, I mean, obviously, you don't have to start a program, but you can continue it and continue to evolve it. And you have a community that is working on what we would call a 4-day work week, but it's not really a 4-day work week. You have that, I'm going to call it, you should name this Magnificent Mondays or something like that. Do they have a name for
we
it?
call them Mission Mondays.
Mission Mondays. That's right.
Mission
Got it.
Mondays.
I love it though. I mean, you have to tag that and now my mind is all spinning, and I know I'm getting a look from Allie like, yeah, there he
No,
goes.
you're getting the final thoughts.
Yeah, I know. I guess I'm throwing the final thought out there. But really what I really like is taking something that's there, continuing to build upon it and make it better for the students. How do we do this better? And I think the best disruptors in education do that. And Jason, you have definitely shared your story here on how you've taken something that was good and even great and made it even better. And obviously, it's not just you; it's a community of people, which is amazing. And there is one thing here, and I'm sure we'll talk about it on the next podcast, Allie, is about that administrative support, man. Just hey, let's build this and let's see what happens. I really, really love that. So before we jump in, I just want to warn you, we're going to give your contact information. I'm going to ask you for that, but it might increase enrollment in your school next year because people in Indiana are probably hearing this. But anyway, Jason, how can people connect with you and your organization, the school? How do people look you up and chat with you?
I mean, personally, I'm active on LinkedIn. Is a great spot to find me. I'm very active there. I do have the other socials as well, mainly Facebook I do a lot with, and a little bit on Instagram. The school itself, they're the same way. That's Oldenburg Academy, can be found. They do most of their posting on Facebook and Instagram, but they do have LinkedIn as well. We do have a fantastic website that is full of information and contact information for what our school is all about, what we're trying to do. And they've got it updated with what the next school year is going to look like and all the changes that are coming there. So pretty easy to find us. You can always send an email too. That's jwalke, WALKE, at oldenburgacademy.org. And I'm happy to share any information and work with anybody to help any way I can.
Yeah, just a side note as well, Ellie. We at Naperville have worked a little bit. We had a conversation. I brought my colleague in as well, and man, we just learned from each other. So, and I hope that's what our listeners are doing. Jason, you are definitely an ultimate educator, disrupting education in the system. Did that roll off my tongue? I think it did. So, we're working on it. But appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Disrupt Education podcast and sharing your story.
Not a problem. I was honored to be asked to be on here. I love following your podcast, and I've enjoyed many episodes, especially Don's.
Oh yeah, you can't beat that guy, and he's been on a couple of times. We may have to get him again. So for Allie Dahl, woo, I almost threw the privet out there again.
All good.
Allie Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrasser. Thank you all for joining us on the Disrupt Education podcast. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co. or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Alli Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.